Welcome to our June 24th Outreach and Network Guild meeting. As always, we'll start with some land acknowledgement and grounding to help us re-arrive in the space and in our bodies and on the land. And a la Norm Leach, we start by acknowledging the land because the land was here long before we became people, and the land will be here long after we are gone. The land is the source of everything that we experience, and we can learn and relearn and unlearn how to live in right relationship with the land. Um, and we can look to our indigenous relatives, both alive now and ancestors who have been keepers of wisdom for how to live in right relationship in lots of different ways and lots of different places. Um, and some of those ancestors are our own because we all have indigenous ancestors. So, whatever ways we can access, whatever ways work for us to move into right relationship, I feel it is our obligation to do so. And I specifically acknowledge the Tonkawa people of this land, so called Central Texas, as well as a bunch of other tribes who have had relationships to this land, with this land, for a very long time, and are very much still in our midst. And I acknowledge my personal obligation of care and stewardship for the lands where I live as a way of living in right relationship. So, as part of that practice, we can work to ground and reground ourselves so that we are able to respond to life in intentional and thoughtful ways. So, I invite you to close your eyes if you would like, and notice the weight of your body on the seat beneath you. Notice the sensation of your body touching the seat, rising up to meet you. And start to notice your breath, bringing fresh oxygen into your body and exhaling carbon dioxide out of your body. This ever present, ongoing, reciprocal relationship with the atmosphere around us. And you might use your breath to bring some spaciousness to your body, to your mind, to your thoughts. You might use an exhale to let out a sigh, to let something go, maybe something heavy or stressful or tiring. And as you breathe, you might notice your inhales and your exhales getting longer and deeper. Reminding ourselves that our breath is always available to us as a tool and a practice for coming back to what is, to this moment, to being in a body on the land. And when you feel sufficient with this practice, I invite you to open your eyes and join us back in the circle. And I will share my screen with our agenda. Oh, could you give me co-host privileges, Ben? And actually, before I share my screen, let's do a check-in question. What's the weather like where you are? External or internal or both? Circle as I see it is Roland, Ben, and then me.
It feels a little close. It's clouded over, but it's warm and not excessively so. Uh, over to, I've forgotten Ben. Ben, over to Ben.
Yeah, kind of ditto external, and it feels we had rain and then we had gray and then little bits of sun coming out. And I was definitely feeling my energy level low on the gray. And now this morning was very sunny to start, and now it's turning gray, and that's actually feeling like it's kind of mirroring my internal weather. So kind of feeling drained, but it's not bad. Not stormy. Over to you, Ronnie.
It was sunny and very hot and humid most of the day, and we just had a storm pass through. So I feel like some of the pressure has dissipated, and I feel that internally also. I came home from work and just stretched and had a snack and felt some decompression. So that feels nice. Awesome. Now I will share my screen. And just to recap, we've kind of had a lot going on outreach wise recently. Um, in terms of our last meeting and what we talked about, um, I had reached out to April and Austin and Ruth about World Localization Day. We decided not to do a coordinated group call meeting. So I'm not sure what April got up to, and I think Austin was planning to gather with people. I know that Ruth ended up facilitating an online group with people she had just met, and it went really well. So that was kind of not planned, but happened and was really cool for her. I had a gathering that was fun, and we could talk about it more in a bit. I just want to kind of cover all of this stuff first. Um, we had sending out more invites to lifeboat builders and other people to Gumboot Boot Camp, including the appeal for financial support. I'm not exactly sure where people are with that. I haven't checked the spreadsheet recently, so that would be good to cover. Um, we added the appeal language for the financial support. I got the newsletter out last week um, with lots of good info in it. We set up the new fundraiser and the target of $10,000, and we've already had a couple donations. We ended up not doing a World Localization Day event, like I said. I still need to look more at webinars and materials, but we had talked about possibly a different kind of circle, so that might be worth revisiting. Um, yeah, so there were some gatherings on June 21st, possibly at least one gathering. I put a new Google Calendar on the website, and we've been circulating those invitations. So, in terms of topics, talking about that ongoing outreach, I think is a good idea. There was something else. Revisiting the conversation about low engagement slash do we want to do any other kinds of circles? Um, and yeah, are there any other updates and or agenda topics that people would like to add? Over to you, Roland.
Uh, yes. And I wanted to say the calendar looks really great. And I wanted to check in on a few things. One of them is um, we started using the grain thing for transcription, and I'm curious about how are we using it and how are we using it or how could we use it? I was also wanting to, and these might be really quick, but we had Paula say that our welcome guide here was a jewel, and I haven't had a chance to check. I don't, is it on the website? And if it's not, I would like to talk about putting it on the website. Also as a anyway, yeah, it's probably already there. I just haven't looked. And I was also wondering about a What the Lifeboat Academy Needs from You page. Um, and That's all I wanted to add. And the none of these I think need to be talked about today. So they don't need to be, I don't think they need to be a priority or anything like that. Over to Ben.
Okay. Um, so I was looking around at other things, and one thing I noticed was I wanted to check in on the Gumboot Bootcamp sign up page, and we have two people who have signed up. Heather Nugent is one for August, which is cool, and the other is a person that I don't know, Tanya, I think. So that is cool, and Tanya is interested in July. And uh, there was something else that Ronnie, you said something, and I was like, oh, right, we should check to see about that. I also am aware that there is an Asana task that we haven't really touched in a long time, which is website changes based on review. And um, yeah, it's from back in May of 2024. But we've been clicking some things off, and uh, anyhow, that's something that I think we could look at to see whether or not those are any things that we want to do. But generally speaking, that agenda looks good to me. Um, yeah, and I'm just trying to kind of get my head back in like where we were and what needs to get done, and so I might come up with something more as we talk about things. Back to you, Ronnie.
Really exciting that there are signups for boot camp. That's cool. Um, I also want to add a topic, um, talking about my engagement as caretaker of this guild as I transition into graduate school, um, taking on, 15 to 20 more hours of work a week. I don't really know what to call that, but, and I don't feel like it has to happen today. I'm not feeling super urgent about it, but it is something I do want to talk about. Um,
Just to jump circle, it kind of seems like that could also be around the low engagement in circles, sort of how we might adjust what we're offering and when we're offering it and how we've that kind of thing. So it's sort of matching resources to things.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, cool. So there's a lot we could talk about. Um, to me, the first two seem like priorities, and there might be other parts, other things that kind of weave in possibly, but I'm curious what are your thoughts or considerations about priority topics? Over to you, Roland.
The first two seem to be the most pressing. I feel like, and anyway, I don't know. There's just today and the last few days have been very emotionally taxing. Uh, so I am trying to keep that in mind about what I can talk about. So I'm going to pass that over to Ben.
Um, yeah, no, that I think that that makes sense with me too. Part of the challenge of some of the stuff that's been emotionally taxing this week is the planning for stuff when there's this sort of uncertainty hanging over our heads. Um, but I think it just makes sense to keep moving forward with stuff and um, uh, here's where we are and how do we respond with where we are. But I think also just kind of um, calling, just naming it, that I think we're both feeling a little spent, not at our best necessarily. So what we get through is and I'm totally fine and comfortable with. I think what we get through is what we get through, and um, uh, so let's just get started. Back to you, Ron.
I want to get started and I also need a bio break. So I will be back in a minute.
And I've found Laura. Oh, that's Laura. Oh, yay. Cool. We
Hey,
liked Laura. We met her. She
we
was
did?
fun.
Was she?
Yeah,
We both spoke with her?
maybe. I
Oh,
don't know.
it would be good to have a little boost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yep. And going back to I just and this was we talked with Laura way back. Oh, where? Yeah, so she wants to be here from July 6th to August 3rd, or at least there's some flexibility, but that's what she originally
So about a month.
scheduled. And yeah, I'm looking at dietary, non-smoker, omnivore.
Cool. I mean, we generally speaking, we mostly eat vegetarian, so that it's always good to know.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'm just
I'm having a moment of like a lot of these topics feel really interwoven to me, and it feels hard to kind of pick one, also with the information and what y'all are processing right now.
Can we group them?
I wonder if can we just do like a circle?
Yeah,
Start with the gathering considerations and see what comes from it.
yes.
So,
Okay.
including actually, I feel like I broke circle. I think Ronnie continuing to process how you were processing, and then we just keep the circle going from
Okay,
based on that.
okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Um, so with the grain transcription, Kath and I are really have been struggling to find a time where our schedules match up to meet for like for 6 weeks or longer. And I'm having a tension of really disillusioned with AI, with social media, with techie stuff. I already have to do a lot for my job. And so even like the idea of going through transcripts to find testimonials to me right now is feeling tedious
Hmm.
and not fun. So part of me right now is just kind of like, I don't want to do it. It's not appealing to me. Um, and I feel like that's connected to a broader thing of people are engaged, and we've been talking about this. People are engaging on social media differently. Social media is changing a lot. People are divesting from the big platforms. How, as outreach, how do we engage with social media in a way can that can feel good and that can feel useful and nourishing and not like an absolute drag, which for me right now, I'm just like I like doing the newsletter. I do. It's a formula. We put good info in there. We help people access our offerings. That is fine. But the rest of it, anyway. So those are some thoughts about that. And it feels connected to low engagement stuff, but I want to give other people a chance to weigh in. So I'll pass to Rowan.
Uh, yeah, I think I have been feeling similarly. Um, Even just doing the little memes, wondering like, what is this actually producing? Uh, and but then trying to think in terms of sociocracy, trying not to just ask the question, but is there what's the so what about it? Um, and I guess it is first talking about social media at all. And if not social media, then what? Um, and yeah, is it and maybe like in the doing a gathering considerations and doing a kind of pros and cons kind of thing. So that's and I guess that's sort of not just grain, but you started talking about the social media, um, largely speaking, which then has brought me to the okay, if not social media, then what? Or if media different, then how? It is both the how and the what. So over to Ben.
Well, this is making me think of appreciative inquiry
Mm.
um and I was also thinking, something that we kind of build in and then we kind of forget pretty consistently is that everything's time limited. Um, that, we run an experiment and then in theory, properly, we should stop, debrief, and regroup. And I think what happens ironically is that we often set the plan for that and then we forget to do it, and then this happens. And we're like, we need to regroup. So I think in part we're just sort of rediscovering, oh, right, the system works, like no matter what we choose to do, it's always tentative and we need to build in what we're learning from it. And so I think in one way, I think this is just normalizing, oh, we've discovered it's time for a bit of a regroup on our outreach. And so it's a good opportunity to reflect on what's our core function, how does it fit with the other things that are going on, and what are we learning lately about what's working and what's not working. And I think this is already coming up, and it's really just having the language. It's sort of like, oh yeah, this is what we're supposed to do. And it's like, oh, well, our understanding of social media and other people's way of using social media is changed because the world is different. So how do we respond to that? Um, and so kind of moving into uh, in my mind, that's kind of morphing then into the given what we've done, where are we now? And given where we are now, where do we want to go? Um, I've thought this for a long time that there's something about using the technology, but using it in a way that isn't how other people are using it. That and and the big thing that I've always, oh well, I'll treat this in kind of a gathering considerations style, and I'll put this out and then step away from it. But one of the themes that's coming back really often to me lately is the main challenge that we have, I think. I don't know if I'm saying I'm doing verbal processing. I don't know if I believe any of this, but lots of people want to sit around and talk about things. And that in particular makes social media a kind of environment. And that is not what I think we're doing, is we're trying to encourage people to do something. The focus is on, go try it, go try to do something. But there's still value in being able to talk about it, debrief it, that kind of thing. So I've consistently been frustrated where I keep wanting to put out something that sparks a conversation and nothing actually seems to spark a conversation. So my intention would, and so I guess what I'm saying is maybe this is an opportunity to shift how we're organizing ourselves so that we make it really clear. And actually, this might be part of the low engagement thing. Um, Maybe all we need is one regular navigating tensions circle or two. That the big deal is you're now you're as a lifeboat builder, the goal is for you to get out there and do something on building your lifeboat and then come to the circle and talk about how it's going. And from that, get a clearer focus on what your next step is. And that might be aspirational because there's all the people that aren't really starting and feel guilty then because they don't want to come because they don't want to admit that they didn't do the thing that they're going to do. I'm rambling now. So over to you, Ronnie.
I actually really like that idea. And when I had my bio break, the word the word simplicity or simplifying came to me, and then I had some internal pushback of like, well, I don't want us to water anything down or not share the tools we have to share. And at the same time, I think, and I know people have had the experience of, oh, this is a lot. This is kind of overwhelming.
Mhm.
But the consistent navigation session or circle can be a place where we still talk about the tools. We talk about what's going on and what's working, what's not working in a way that it is more experiential, maybe in a sense. It's less like, come and we'll teach you how to do things, and then you'll do your project and have homework. And it's more like, how are you today? What did you do this past week that feels like it worked well? Um, yeah. Um, and you can meet with a mentor if you want to kind of more closely track your progress to get some more one-on-one support.
Mhm.
Because like I think those two things seem to be at the core of what we're offering. Because one thing that is occurring to me is this perennial issue of our core team is so small. And we're trying to do so much and invite people in, and they come in, but they don't stick around. So maybe we can still do things in a different way that people will stick around. I don't know. It's starting to
Mhm.
become word soup in my head, but um anyway, yes. Over to Roland.
Um, well, I appreciate the reminder of the one of our basic principles of aim, act, reflect. And I think across guilds, um, yeah, and trying to build that in, and um, so that's important. I was also wondering about the conversation and um, there is a tendency of saying everything's wrong, no one's coming. How do we change things? And which is understandable because we're not getting the results that we're looking for, and we're still casting around. And so I'm trying to engage in some sort of appreciative inquiry around it so that, like, are there things that we're doing that are working, and what are they? Is that a better place to start than to talk about what's not working?
Mhm.
So, because and this may just be the mood that I'm in, but there may be fewer things that are working, so it'll be quicker to get through than um but I joke. I don't know. And this is part of the reason why we do these kinds of exercises is that there's the outlook, how I'm feeling, what's going on in my life right now, which is not the same thing as what's actually happening. So how do I connect more with what's real to be able to get to um, hopefully what makes sense as a next step, as what to aim for, to act on
Mhm.
from our reflecting. Over to Ben.
Mhm. Well, and yeah, I think there is a lot that is working, and a lot of the lessons that they're they're like one of the things I definitely second the let's look at what's working. And in part, I think one of the sort of confirmations is this is slow work. Like
Mhm.
it's slow and steady work, and that's challenging. It's hard to communicate because, it's talking about game B to game A folk. And even when you get it, one of the things I was saying at Circle today, and it's a reminder to myself, is there is a process that goes from head knowledge to bone knowledge, in my experience. And it takes a while to get the head knowledge part, like just talking the ideas and getting the concepts and the thought experiment part of it. And then you have to go into the experiential part. So you can get stuck. It's sort of one of the concepts in science is necessary and sufficient conditions. And so oxygen is a necessary condition for fire, but it's not a sufficient condition. So you can't have fire without oxygen, but the presence of oxygen doesn't make fire happen. And I think there's the same thing with head knowledge is necessary, but it's not sufficient. And I think that what we're talking about is a way of inviting people into, I think, Roland, you were just saying, like tipping your toe in. Like how do we support people
Mm.
to tip the toe in and not make it a big deal? Because that's real where the real learning comes from. The aim, act, reflect. You have to act. You have to act for it to work, and you have to reflect for it to work. If you just get stuck in aiming and dreaming, it doesn't work. If you just get stuck in doing, 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 and you never pause, it doesn't work. If you only ponder your navel, it doesn't work. It's only when you put it all together that you start to experience the like, oh, right, I can trust myself to figure out my next step, try the next step, and learn from it as I go. And anyhow, it's waxing philosophical, but the so what, how it's relevant to the so what is, I think that is just reality, is this is a slow and steady process. Not everyone's going to go through in a linear way. Some people may show up and go away and come back. Some people may show up and go away. Some people may show up and stay.
Mm.
And that has little or nothing to do. And I think that we want to find what are the tools that help people show up and stay, but it's probabilities. And so we can't, we should be looking at what's the probability that someone stays, not do they or don't they. You know, over to you, Ronnie.
Well, in terms of what's working, I I think the navigation sessions are really powerful. And I was thinking about how, like, I feel like I've learned the most from being in circle and just hearing. And the navigation session is really about where are you right now? What is happening right now? And in general, in the dominant culture, we don't have enough spaces to actually process what's going on right now. Some people are in therapy, but in terms of group spaces, it just doesn't exist. And so, and that's a way for people to dip their toe in. Like they could come to a navigation session to talk about a conflict they're having with a friend and hear about other people having tension in building a lifeboat and building community and running a nonprofit and be exposed to new ideas, new ways of doing things, aim, act, reflect, treating things like an experiment, and then be like, okay, that's interesting. I wanna come back. I wanna hear more about what other people have to say, and I feel better after a navigation session. Um, and the example of like my limited experience in Buddhist communities, people come to sit meditation and they might hear a teacher speak or somebody speak, and it's their interest that brings them back. Nobody's like, hey, come join our program, come join our community. It's like, come back if you want. And people do, and then if they want to seek out deeper teaching with a teacher, they can do that. And so this kind of is making me think of, this is our sangha, and people are having an experience that makes them want to come back or not. But that's ultimately, that's why I love Circle, and that's what I want to offer to people. um yeah, over to Roland.
I was just thinking about the I think the most successful navigating tension circles was the ones that you were running, Ben, from when we were at High Grove. Uh, that it kind of fell apart shortly before we left because things were fraught. But that lasted for a long time, and I feel like, and then there's also the meetings to save the world that went on for a long time, and it was almost like it was a I'm thinking of them as like navigation teams, people who get to know each other.
Mhm.
And so one of the reasons to come back was to subsequent meetings was that you were getting to know people, and you wanted to well, kind of, you wanted to hang out, you wanted to find out what was going on with them. Um, so that was successful. Um, and so in the spirit of talking about our successes, I'm bringing that one forward over to Ben.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that team part is also is an important factor. I've been thinking a lot lately about um, trying to figure out, this is a little bit tangential, so I will let the other circle keepers, rein me in. Um, but I've been thinking about Foodlands, BCCRN, and Social Roots as potential allies in what we're doing, and how to weave together what we're doing with what they're doing, and what's our contribution and what's their contribution. And the BCCRN model, uh, the part that I really like about it is there are local CRNs that have a coordinator. So, by there's a person who's designated in the community whose job is to organize one of these community response networks. And they are basically a paid volunteer. There's a little bit of a stipend, but it's mostly work that they're just doing because they want to do it. And so they are local organizers. And then those organizers meet with mentors, and the mentors, so the local organizer is working on their project, and the mentor is available, and different mentors do different things. But one of the things that we've heard is the coordinators want more time with other coordinators to do that kind of peer-to-peer debriefing with the mentor present. And then the mentors have their own circle where they get together and they talk about what they're hearing in the local CRNs. And that seems like a really smart model because the mentors are there to assist the coordinators. They have a little bit more experience, but the coordinators are doing something similar at the same time. But then because the mentors have their fingers in all these different projects, they can see themes and patterns that the local coordinators can't see. And I just think there's so much potential, and that's partly what I was modeling here is if we could, if our core team were the mentors, and each of us had some coordinators, some lifeboat builders that are, that are on our team, then, and I think that an innovation that would make that better is actually like, um, well, let's just say the four of us, the three here plus April are starting mentors, that we each have a couple, a few lifeboat builders that we're looking after, that we're connected with, and that even can gravitate towards the aspect that, we all represent different aspects. So, Roland is definitely the more practical guy, and there are some people that are more interested in the practical stuff, and they become Roland's lifeboat builders. And April is more on the sort of personal development side, and I'm more on the sociocracy side or whatever. But the one innovation is I would like us to not have single circles, but where, Ronnie, you and I do one circle. And well, the original model would be Ronnie and I do a circle, and Ronnie and April do a circle, and April and Roland do a circle, and Roland and Ben do a circle. We kind of mix and match. And so no one's depending on one. It kind of avoids the silos and stuff like that. Anyhow, I think that's kind of more than we can do right now, but I think it brings me back to, is part of this engagement about how do we reach out to Foodlands and figure out what can we offer to the 15 or 20 farms that Foodlands is talking to, and how do we reach out to whoever, to Social Roots, and see, are there some people there who might be interested in either being mentors or lifeboat builders? So random thoughts over to Ronnie.
I like that idea, that model.
I
Because
know you want trouble. Sorry.
I already find myself being a mentor to people randomly in my community. And it feels easier to be like, I'm here, I'm based in place with them. So I'm offering support to them in the moment. And then I come back to this group and I'm like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing, here's where I'm struggling. The other idea I'm having is, my friend and I have been talking about having a grief support circle for grief workers because we don't have support in the way that we're trying to offer it. And so it makes me think about, and so many organizers and nonprofit people are all they're realizing they need to be pivoting more towards lifeboat building, even though they don't call it that, but resilience building. So people who are already doing this work who don't have support to make that shift and figure out how to do that. So I don't know, more word soup, word chili happening. Because I know the more that I engage, like with my church and being in different people, I'm going to be in a position where I'm able to offer support. And I don't necessarily, not every one of those people is going to want to come to a navigation session, but I can have a session with them, as it comes up. Anyway, I think that's all. Over to Roland.
I feel like I gave my, my contribution of and are we still talking about what's working?
Mm.
So yeah, that's going to be my contribution. Are we still talking about what's working and to build from that? And the reason that I thought it would be good to talk about what's working first is to then segue into what's not working and looking at the two to see what we can do. So I'm going to keep comments that I have on what you just said, Ronnie, until a little bit later, I think, because that's really interesting, and I think that we can build on it, but I'm not quite sure how yet. Over to Ben.
Yeah, well, and I feel like that is talking about what's working. It's sort of building on here's what I'm noticing, right? Th this is yeah, and I'm not sure how this turns into who does what by when, um and how do we keep it scaled for where we are right now, what's possible to do right now. Um I feel like there are a couple things that are coming up. One is um, we have not been talking about we need more guild meetings and we need more people in the guilds. Um, so I think there is something about, and in talking about how things are working, um, like the farm guild, the online farm guild meeting has turned into something very different than what we intended for the farm guild. Um, And I think that just naturally makes sense because what we intended is really what happens here on the property, and it really only makes sense for people that are here on the property. And in a way, the Farm Guild meeting has turned into a circle, like a sharing circle. What are you working on? How's it going? What questions do you have? Um, and and I'm not, so I think that there is work that needs to get done. But part of the question is, do we still need an outreach and a heartwork and a farm and a research guild and a finance guild? Or is it maybe time for us to sort of think about how we consolidate some of the guilds, or maybe consolidate or retire and just say, what are the core things that there is business that has to happen for the Lifeboat Academy, the behind the scenes stuff. There's the public facing meetings like the circles, and then there's the guild work that we need to do to be able to get things done, to prepare for the life. It's like the gumboot boot camps. We need internal work so that we have a plan and we know who's going to do what and we've got the resources. But for the people coming to the boot camp, all they need to know is the dates and here's where to sign up. So that might be part of that simplification is, what's the real work? Um, and in terms of outreach, what do we need beyond, like to come back to the conversation about uh, social media, any effort spent on social media, if we could take the same effort spent on social media and put it into personal emails to, targeted personal emails that just say, hey, Sonia, how's it going? I think we would have an exponential increase in effectiveness. So do we just let go of or really scale back any effort that we're doing on that kind of social media front? And then really just say, let's try to get more relational. Um, those are my thoughts for this round. Over to Ronnie.
Yeah, like outreach and network. Outreach is really about communications. It doesn't have to be, like you're saying, it doesn't have to be all of these different channels. It can be the monthly newsletter and emails to people and making sure people know how to join a circle. I love that there's a basically like a farming circle happening, and it makes me think about circles, maybe a couple different, two or three different kinds of circles. Maybe there's a regular farming circle, there's a mentors circle, people who are actively supporting other people who are doing community stuff. And then maybe there's navigating tension sessions that are regular and anybody can come to process any tension about anything. Those are just some ideas. And we can still share a lot of the materials we have on a one-to-one, one-on-one basis. So if somebody expresses, I'm having trouble, I'm hearing people talk about sociocracy. That sounds really cool. I'd love to learn more. I could shoot them an email after and say, hey, here's Sociocracy 101. And then we can set up a meeting if you want to talk about it more. So it's more casual, it's more relational, but still providing those tools and resources. Yeah, I'm liking the general direction over too long.
I want I'm uh, I, I think I'm going to say something and then I'm going to pass to Ben and I'm going to go get a glass of water to try to freshen myself up. And this isn't exactly appreciative inquiry, and I hope it's okay, just to embroider a little bit on what Ronnie was saying. We have the nifty new calendar. How can we make use of it and to be able to more easily invite people to comfort to conversations? So I'll pass to Ben and I'll be back.
Mhm. Well, and I kind of feel like, um, in terms of process, um, I'm reading the circle. I think Roland's fatigue is probably a good sign for us that there may be, uh, I have embraced a sleep on it period for these conversations. It's sort of like I feel like we're coming, there's an outline that seems to be forming, and that's good enough for me for now. That, can we kind of land the outline and then see where that, give ourselves some space and see where that develops or how it develops. And similarly, responding to what you were saying, Ronnie, is a sort of an outline. Um, Part of the question then is who is interested in those circles? Like we have a lot of different things that we can do. We will do what people are interested in doing, and it's sort of like we can do, that can be one of the things that we reach out to folks on is, would you be interested in this, that, and the other? But doing it in a relational way. Like I was just thinking, I'm going to be chatting with Andy tomorrow. And interestingly, one of the things that Andy shared with me, and I don't think I'm, betraying confidences or anything, is he's got, a kind of mild social anxiety about, getting online with a bunch of people. And even said, when he shows up at the circles, they're really good and he likes it. And, he walks away thinking I should come to more of these. But then on a Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, he's like, I'll give this a miss. So, but we continue to have conversations, right? So, just talking with him tomorrow and saying, hey, by the way, we're planning on retooling things a little bit. What would you like? How could we support what you're doing? And, what feels right to you? So that we actually offer what seems interesting to people. And And I think that asking that question is a really good outreach mini project. Asking that question in a way that is relational and not, we're going to do a survey, not blast out an email and, give people 4 boxes and say, which ones do you want to check? But we actually have some conversations. And yeah, and Roland, you were out of the room, but I was saying, I feel like we might be getting to a sleep on it point,
Mhm.
that if we can kind of say, here seems to be what we're kind of generally agreeing on, and then let's come back to this in a little bit. Um, yeah, I'll stop there. Over to Ronnie.
I like that idea. And I also am thinking about ways we've done that in the past. And sometimes we say, which of these things are you interested in? And people say, I'm interested in these 3 things. And then they end up not coming. And
Yeah.
so we've designed a whole schedule and a whole thing to accommodate people who don't come.
Yep.
And and that makes, I know that I'm not trying to be black and white about it, but it is a thing that happens. And so
Hmm.
part of me is wondering about, of the 4 people in the core group, what do we need first and foremost?
Yeah.
What would be useful to us? What works for us in our schedule? Like, could we schedule a navigation session so that April can be there? Would that be useful to her? And then kind of trying that and then moving out from there. Who shows up? What else do you need? What else are you interested in? And then my second idea was, as part of the calendar on the website, having a note that says, are you interested in offering another kind of circle or event? Let us know. Here's our email address. And having that invitation be very clear that other people are welcome to do things. Um, and so maybe our calendar could become even more colorful than it is.
Mhm.
And I also am feeling ready to sleep on it. And we have a coordination circle in 6 days. So that seems like good timing. Over to Roland.
Uh, I'm going to push back a little bit on the put it on the website or in the newsletter, and reference back to Ben talking about having more direct contact with people in terms of appreciative inquiry. And I'm sorry, I keep coming back to it because I feel like it's useful. We have That's one of the things that we do a lot, is that we just send out stuff and we expect people to respond, and we're often disappointed. So it seems like what Ben was saying about finding ways of having more direct contact with people and asking from person to person, maybe, is something that we haven't done a lot of, I don't think. And I'd be curious, if we're willing, I'd be curious to figure out how to do that and to try it. And is it really just, sort of like chit-chatting with people and asking, or is there something other that could or should be done? Over to Ben.
Yeah. Both and I think I like what Ronnie is proposing in terms of, why don't we think about what we need, what we can offer, like what seems like it's not an overburden, and what seems like it would be useful and helpful to us. And yeah, I'm really liking um how do I want to say this? I think it's what I I've been thinking about this for years, around how to really do the CRM, the customer relationship management stuff. And it always seems to break down because I try to bulk it. I try to figure out who's in what category and everything. And I'm wondering if, kind of in the same spirit, if each of us were to think of who are in all the stuff that we've been doing, here are the people that we kind of gravitate towards. And we like to check in with, or who's on my radar? Who's on my radar just to touch base with and set up a little conversation. And maybe this is in the spirit of how do the four, or whoever we may have a slightly larger core team. Um, but who are the people, and actually keeping it dead. I'm totally verbal processing now, so I apologize. But you know, uh, riffing on what you were saying, Ronnie, about that the meeting is what have you done in the last week or two, and what can you do in the next week or two? And it's sort of like, can you set up one or two send out one or two invitations for a half an hour chat or whatever. And without it being kind of restrictive, but really simple. Like Rosa is on my list of people I want to touch base with, and she just responded to the calendar. I'm going to send Rosa an email and just see if she wants to chat and see what's up with her. And we go from there. And it's very organic. Um, and that we kind of figure out what we need to support that as we go. And an unrelated thought, but one of the things I discovered a tab that I've had open for like probably 2 years on one of my browsers, and it was about the fairshare.org. And they're talking about how do you create an enterprise that truly is fair to all of the contributions of the people who've been doing it. And we match in every particular what they are proposing, including the living lab model, that where everything's an experiment. But one of the things they talk about is the importance of having a learning platform. And it makes me think of, what you were saying, Ronnie, in terms of like, oh, well, if you're curious about sociocracy, here's a Medium post, or here's a half an hour intro. Watch that, and I'll check in with you to see if you have any questions. And that it's a very personalized, I will follow up. And that's a follow-up that could just be an email, right? Did you get a chance to watch that video? Do you have any questions? If so, here's my calendar link. And and I feel like I'm moving on to other conversations. So I think this is I'm ready to wrap up. I feel like let's put a bow on this. I'm rambly. Over to you, Ronnie.
Yeah, it's been a lot of ideas, and I like the, reaching out to who's on our radar. And Ruth and we now have a meeting every 2 weeks on Fridays. So I can check in with her and see where she's at and see if she might want to facilitate something in the future, and what she might be needing, just as an example. Um, but yeah, I think this was really generative, and I'm looking forward to the digestion part over the next few days. Over to Rowan.
Uh, Over to Ben.
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah, I think I'm good. Back to you.
Alrighty, so action items. Sleep on it. Does that sound good? All right. Any last thoughts for the good of the cause? Over to Roland.
Over to Ben.
Go team. Over to you, Ronnie.
Good talk. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you when we see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.